everyone, and welcome to the Writing Center's presentation on comma rules using commas and non-restrictive clauses. This is one of the several presentations on using commas correctly in sentences. So let's look at using commas to set off non-restrictive clauses. For one, when you surround a group of words with commas and punctuation, it is when the clause can be removed from the sentence and the sentence will still be clear and will make sense. This is called a non-restrictive clause because the information adds to the noun it describes, but it is not essential and it does not limit or, as the word shows, restrict the meaning. So here we have a sentence, Italo's restaurant is having a special for Taco Tuesday. We have a subject and a verb, and we have a complete thought, knowing which specific restaurant is having this special. When we add this phrase after Italo's restaurant, whose tacos you love, is having a special for Taco Tuesday, the phrase adds to the sentence, but it doesn't restrict the meaning. Therefore, it's a non-restrictive clause. We know exactly which restaurant is having the special regardless of whether or not that phrase is in there. Essentially, when you add commas, you can pluck that whole clause out and it still makes sense. Now let's look at when a clause is restrictive. Restrictive clauses restrict, limit, or specify the meaning of the noun that they describe. This means that when removed, even if the sentence is still grammatically correct, the sentence is unclear or ambiguous. So here we have another sentence similar to our sentence in the last slide. The restaurant is having a special for Taco Tuesday. We still have a subject and we still have a verb, and it is a grammatically correct sentence, a complete thought. However, if you were to tell your friend about this, he or she might not know which specific restaurant you're talking about. If you're talking directly to someone and you add a phrase as seen here, the restaurant whose tacos you love is having a special for Taco Tuesday, the person you are talking to now understands a specific restaurant, even though it isn't named like in our last slide. This specifies the restaurant, and therefore this is a restrictive clause that does not get surrounded by commas because it doesn't mean the same thing when you take it out. Sometimes certain words will indicate whether a clause is restrictive or non-restrictive. When choosing between the words that and which, use the word that to introduce a restrictive clause and which to introduce a non-restrictive clause. So here we have an example. My keys that were on the table are missing. That clause right there, that were on the table, refers to keys, but notice that there is no comma anywhere in the sentence because it is a restrictive clause. However, same sentence when we use the word which, you surround the clause in commas because it becomes a non-restrictive clause. My keys, which were on the table, are missing. Here we have another example when the clause is at the end of the sentence rather than in the middle. I just began my assignment. That is not due in 2 weeks. The word that makes the clause restrictive and therefore doesn't have a comma. However, the same sentence using the word which gets a comma after the word the clause describes. I just began my assignment, comma, which is due in 2 weeks. Let's look a little bonus lesson as we talk about the meaning of certain words in clauses. Whether restrictive or non-restrictive, the word who is used to describe a person rather than any of the other modifying words. Here we have an example in a restrictive clause. The student who is always early for class was late today. Now that is non-restrictive with no commas because the clause who is always early for class gives us an idea of a specific student we are talking about. You would not refer to the student by the word that because the student is a person and therefore gets referred to by the word who. Here we have an example of a non-restrictive clause using the word who. Sarah, comma, who is always early for class, comma, was late today. If we take out that clause surrounded by commas, we still know which specific student was late for class today. We do not refer to Sarah by the word which because she is a person, and therefore she gets the word who. I hope that that lesson was helpful. Please feel free to review it as many times as you need. And if you are still unclear on how to use commas to restrict clauses or when to indicate if a clause is non-restrictive, please feel free to come to the Writing Center and we will go over it in further detail. Happy writing, everyone!